think, the first thing we could start on, I don't know if you guys want to jump right in. Should we go right into the Detroit Lions, Hendon Hooker, that, guys? Let's do it. All right. Well, we got, a little sound yesterday. And, of course, one of the big things of day 2 of the draft was, all right, one, the dissecting of the Detroit Lions and what they did day 1, right? Oh, they took 2 players a few spots before they should have. So what? They had needs. Those are the guys they wanted to get at those positions. They filled the needs, right, with the players they wanted. So it can't be that bad of a draft if that's the goal was to go in to go fill needs with players we wanted, and they did that. And if it's 8, 10 spots too early, who gives a damn? But one of the other surprises of day 2 was that Hendon Hooker was still on the board, round 3, hanging around. I mean, I know there's a ton of people in the NFL who had first-round grades on him. Do you want to bring that guy in and confuse the quarterback situation in your room? That's why teams don't just go, oh, yeah, I'll take him. He's there. The value's worth it, second and third round. You got to think about the chemistry and how that's going to work on your football team. And, of course, it's going to cause a little bit of distraction because Hendon Hooker's super talented. People look at him as a starting caliber NFL-type quarterback. So there he is in round 3 on the board. And here comes the Detroit Lions, where we know Jared Goff played well last year. He's revived his career. But did he revive it to where you could just go, oh, wait, he's the future, and we know he's the guy, hands down, no matter what? I don't know about that. I think maybe he's working towards that. He puts another year together like he did last year. It's going to be hard to replace him here anytime soon. But Hendon Hooker is going to be that guy looking over his shoulders. And yesterday we had Dan Campbell on Green Light with Chris Long. Chris Long, one of my buddies, Howie Long's son, of course. So without further ado, here's Dan Campbell with Chris Long yesterday.
We did go into this offseason saying that we wanted to bring in some competition at quarterback. Yep. We didn't know exactly where that might be, who that would be at the time. But we did like Hooker. We knew he was coming off the injury, but there was something about him that was appealing. He's very mature. He looks the part. He's got a big arm. He's got to learn how to play in the NFL. But he's a pro now. And I like the fact that he was older. We all kind of like the fact he was older. I think you want your quarterback to be a little bit more mature. This is a redshirt year for him. He's got to get this leg right first, and then he'll learn. He'll learn under Jared, And then let's see what happens. If he can eventually become your 2, or maybe down the road later on, it's more than that. But it's going to be a long time.
Well, there you have it. Dan Campbell with Chris Long, kind of addressing that Hendon Hooker situation. And I agree with a lot of what he said. Anybody who listened to my podcast or me and Mike talk about Hendon Hooker and the quarterback situations, right? Some people, and I felt like it was a little more in the scouting community, were negative on his age, right? Oh, he's older. Right, but again, why does everybody look at it as, oh, we're going to have this guy for 10 or 15 years? Right? Don't think that far down the road. What is he right now? What can he contribute to my football team here in the next 4 to 5 years? That's the window you got to think of when you're talking about Hendon Hooker. And yeah, he's going to get a redshirt year, coming off an ACL injury, and get to heal that, but probably will be able to be, a viable backup candidate or a third stringer somewhere halfway through the year. And he works and he goes from there. But he's got everything you want as far as Dan Campbell is talking about as far as pro stature. I mean, he is, first off, mature. You could see that, and there is benefit to that. I don't care what anybody says. Anybody out there can speak from experience, right, of when you're 26, 27 years old, you're a different guy than when you were 20 and 21, which is what most of these quarterbacks are coming out in the draft. So now you get that, a guy here that's, had a few experiences, had to lead a few different teams in college football, has had to overcome some tough circumstances, and here's another one with the injury. I think there are teams that really looked at that one, wait, this guy's been through some stuff here. He knows how to, get knocked down, get back up, handle situations, and he is a pro as far as everything except, hey, he's got to get in a pro offense. He was in a little different offense there in Tennessee, and that's where things are, going to be different for him there. So I hadn't really heard them address the thought of Hendon Hooker or anything like that, so I found some of those comments interesting.
Well, they clearly didn't draft him to play this year.
Yeah, right.
there's no guarantee he's even going to be cleared to play this. I mean, the guy tore his ACL in November.
Yeah.
This is a long-term play. I just think it raises real questions about Jared Goff down the line. He's got 2 years left on his contract. And having Hooker around is a nice piece of leverage in the event that Goff takes the Lions the next step this year and all of a sudden decides he wants 40 or 45 million a year.
Yeah, right.
They can say, no, Jared, no, we're not paying you that. We're happy to consider 25 or 30, but we're not doing 40 or 45 or more than that just because you were the captain of a ship that would have sailed very well without you and could if we need to.
Yeah, well, I think that's what's going to happen here a little bit. We saw this happen last year, right, Mike, with like Tua and the Dolphins in that situation, where I think Detroit's gotten good enough now and they made enough moves in the offseason where it's like, well, they're a playoff caliber team. There's no excuses for anybody. The quarterback doesn't have an excuse or anything like that. And you know, the other aspect, and you know, hopefully they get these answers. And for Jared Goff, hopefully he plays great and keep Hendon Hooker on the bench for as long as possible. But yes, if things don't go right, this could be it. This could be the last year, you know, depending on how Hendon Hooker develops and all of that. But you know, to the point with Jared Goff, Mike, I mean, I do feel like that's happening a little bit. We look at the Lions, we're all going, hey, we think maybe they're the best team in the NFC North. Right? They've made improvements to their team. They had a great draft. So there is no excuses. And with the bullseye on their back, I think it is going to make life harder on Jared Goff and the Lions altogether. You know, Mike, one thing I always talk about with like quarterbacks in that situation a little is, you know, when the game's wide open and you know your defense isn't good, it can be easy to play quarterback on those football teams. I don't know. We'll see how it plays this year. It might be a different way as far as how they play and how their defense plays and, of course, having a bullseye because they're good.
Well, that's right, and that's going to be the burden that they carry this year. They haven't even done anything, realistically. Not even a playoff appearance. They did have a Week 18 victory that felt like a bowl game.
Yeah.
Because they're one of the few teams that exit the season with a win and can say success. But they still haven't been to the playoffs. But they're carrying the weight of expectation that they will make it to the playoffs. They're the favorite to win the division. This is a team that hasn't even won a playoff game since 1991. When's the last time they were in the postseason?
220. I want to say 2016, right? Was that 2016 when, or was that 2014? 2016 when they beat the Lions.
Was it one of the years with
2014,
Calvin Johnson and Matthew Stafford?
Yeah, well, 2014 they lost to the Cowboys in a controversial call.
Oh,
and then
that's
2016 they lost in Seattle. Remember, I think in a wild card game. I think that's the last two games at times they were in the playoffs.
They got screwed in that game against the Cowboys.
Exactly.
They remember there was a controversial call.
Pass interference.
Like both illegal contact and pass interference on the same play. Both weren't called.
Right.
In that game against the Cowboys. But still, they have this shine about them that they've done nothing to have to carry. It's this burden. All of a sudden, go be great. Just because they finished last year in the regular season strong, they were horrible at the start. So we'll see what they do. And this is one of those teams, I know we have a draft coming up later, that early season schedule could have a huge impact on what happens down the road. Because I think this year, if they fall into a hole early, it's going to be a little harder to dig out of it. They're not going to catch anybody by surprise.
Yeah, exactly.
In October, November, December, if they start slowly. Teams are going to continue to come at them and not go easy and not view them as a simple victory. And we know how that goes. Teams get up and get down. There's measuring stick games and there's non-measuring stick games. Now, all of a sudden, the Lions are a measuring stick and they've done nothing to become a measuring stick, grand scheme of things.
Well, yeah, grand scheme of things, you're right. They're a team that, you know, we see potential for, right? I think they're a team that we said last year where we felt like, ooh, they get in the playoffs. They could be scary because their offense was so good, their ability to run the ball, control the clock, do all that. You worried about, hey, they might be able to stay on the field, shorten the game, and maybe upset somebody a little, right? So that's where, we see the potential of the football team. Now, the big thing is we hit on Jared Goff, and of course that, and yeah, he's got to continue to play well, but they did add to their team, and their defense is really the big question. The defense has kind of gotten a free pass there to a degree because the offense and Ben Johnson and Jared Goff, and we all started talking about that so much. And, I think sometimes we forget, hey, yeah, the defense was the worst in football. That's got to get better this year. I mean, that's a huge issue with their football team. And, can they fix that? They made a lot of great signings in free agency. They got some guys in the draft, offense and defense, in the first few rounds that are going to be able to contribute to their team right now, that are pro-ready. So I do like that. So they're going to have a different look, certainly. It's just about, how do they react to now being one of the teams that's hunted instead of the team that's, usually doing the hunting.
And that's going to be the key. Look, Bears, we don't know how good they're going to be. They could be better. Vikings, we don't know what they're going to be. We're going to hear from Kevin O'Connell later in the program interview I did with him yesterday afternoon. Their defense isn't going to be any worse than it was last year. I can guarantee you that. And their offense could be better than last year. Now, are they going to continue to pull a rabbit out of their butts every week and win games that they easily could lose? That's a different issue altogether. But they're not going to just evaporate. They're not going to go away. And the Packers, I think people are underestimating them. And there are folks out there that want to argue with me about that. Why would we think the Packers are just going to disintegrate without Aaron Rodgers? They have been a competitive team for 30 plus years. They haven't suddenly decided to surrender. So this is all going to make it a challenge for Goff. It makes it a challenge for Campbell. It is an unreasonable level of expectation relative to accomplishment. And whatever Dan Campbell says about Hendon Hooker, I don't expect him to play this year, but depending upon how things go in 2023, we could see him as soon as 2024. How could we not at least believe that's a possibility, Chris, on the radar screen? I don't know what a long time means, but a year to get healthy, a year to get his bearings, and then after this season, depending upon what the Lions do or don't do, they see where they are at the quarterback position. And if they fail to live up to the expectations they now have, it's going to be somebody's fault, and Jared Goff's going to be the easy person to blame.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's fair to, assess that, or from what we see now, right? I can't imagine that they're totally sold that he's the future. If the Detroit Lions win and he plays well and they go to the playoffs, well, then Hendon Hooker's going to have to sit there and wait a little longer. But if the Lions don't go to the playoffs, and maybe some of those, the same as some of the reason, or the biggest reason is Jared Goff didn't play well down the stretch or the end of big football games, then it's going to be wide open. I mean, wide open to the fact where I wouldn't be shocked if they just let go of Jared Goff altogether and just said, let's start a new era here. Or is it just Jared Goff? Okay, now, hey, it's an open competition between you and Hendon Hooker, and you're going to have to duel it out. That's where, this thing can go anywhere right here. And I think with Hendon Hooker, their hands are less tied than ever, and that's where, this year becomes extremely important for Jared Goff.
Jared Goff was acquired by the Lions so they could get an extra first-round pick from the Rams. That's it. Anything they got out of Jared Goff is gravy on top of gravy. On top of gravy. I thought it would be 2 years and definitely over. He played well enough to get a third year. It's now on him to play well enough to get a fourth year.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.